we'll go ahead and get rolling here. I'm sure, as y'all can see, I am not Georgia Beers. I hope and pray every night, but I wake up and I'm Anna Hartnett Reichardt. I will be moderating this panel in her place. And this is the Opposites Attract panel. So we're gonna dig deep into one of the bigger tropes of our genre here. So I'm excited. We have some awesome panelists with us today. Start with Jackie D. Born and raised in San Francisco, she lives with her wife, their son, and their mini furry companions. She earned a bachelor's degree in recreation administration and a dual master's degree in management and public administration. She is a Navy veteran and served as a flight deck director on board the USS Abraham Lincoln in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Southern Watch. Her 10th novel, Profile, was released in December 2022. All right, Jackie, you want to tell us a little bit about your novel and how the Opposites Attract trope plays into that?
Sure. So Profile, it was, well, it is, not was. It's a book about a FBI profiler and an FBI agent. And the agent has been essentially keeping she's been investigating off the books what she believes to be a massive government cover-up, essentially, that has to do with voting machines and trying to steal elections and some stuff that's a little bit tethered to some of the chaos that we've seen in the last few years. But she's essentially kept it a secret, one, because she doesn't want to tip anyone off, and two, she doesn't want to seem kind of off her rocker. She encounters Cassidy, who is the FBI profiler, through her partner. And they used to be, Cassidy and her partner Hunter used to be married. So Cassidy is very, kind of calm and thoughtful, and she's, trained in psychology, and she's pretty adept at reading people, whereas Alex is a little bit more impulsive, off the rails, and is much more likely to kick down a door than Cassidy is going to be. So it's a lot of fun to write them. I did enjoy writing them. I have a history of doing Opposites Attract, especially in my more thriller / mystery novels. I think it adds something a little bit extra to the tension, at least for me. So I enjoyed doing it, and I brought back some characters from my original trilogy, the After Dark series. So I've got a lot of feedback from readers that they were excited to see Brooke and Tyler again, even though it was only brief, but I had to, because it's kind of the same universe, the FBI, Homeland Security, that area. So
yeah, that's awesome. And I love the Opposites Attract, like, on a team together.
Mm-hmm.
It brings out the best in each other and just works so well. That sounds great. Okay, Renee Roman lives in arguably upstate New York. What is arguably upstate New York?
Well, because the false belief is that anything that's above New York City is upstate New York.
Okay.
But people who live in the Capital District, where I live, that's not upstate New York. Lake George, the Adirondacks, that's upstate New York. So
okay.
I guess it all depends on where you live. It's just like they consider like Buffalo part of upstate New York. Really? No, that's Western New York.
I think you're gonna start a fight. Okay, so arguably upstate New York with your fur baby Maisie. You're passionate about living an adventurous life, exploring her authentic self, and writing. Her novel, Body Language, was a finalist in the GCLS 2022 erotic romance category. Look for Renee on Facebook and Twitter. All right, Renee, so how does Opposites Attract play into your latest release?
Well, my latest release, which is coming out actually in February, is Desires Unleashed. And it is an erotic romance with a BDSM theme. Taylor Simpson is a dominant in the lifestyle, and her world is very controlled and calculated and calm. That is her persona in and out of the community. And Cal Murphy is a Irish, impulsive, take charge kind of, it's my way, or, there's going to be hell to pay kind of thing. And she's had to adapt that way based on her family history, where her siblings always managed to get her parents' attention, and their way ultimately. And she's had to scrap and fight for everything she's ever gotten. And her last relationship, she was never able to find that rhythm that a couple seems to fall into or discover together. And now she wonders if that's just going to be her life, or if it's possible that there's a way to find that with someone in the future, but she's not really looking. And she takes a job moonlighting as a bartender to just get away from her day job, where she's got to be, the boss and in control, and controlling everything that happens in the resort. She works at a resort as an operations manager. And so she just wants a job where she can enjoy being with people and not having to control anything except the drink that she puts in front of a person. And that's where they meet. That's where Taylor and Kel meet, is in the bar.
Gotcha.
And it's called the Waterhole.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. I love a good bar name. All right. And then we have C.A. Popovich. Lives in Michigan, where she writes romance novels and loves to read. The One is her 8th novel. So, Carol, do you want to tell us a little bit about The One and how that opposites attract trope plays into that?
Sure. When I first started thinking about the characters for this, I decided I wanted to do a financial disparity. Okay, I have Nicole Bergeron, who is a very wealthy woman. She's from a family that owns property across the United States. And she manages some of her family's different warehouses and things. And then Jody Acosta is a woman that she works for a furniture company, furniture store. She does the books and she, does inventory. So she basically has to work for a living. And Nicole is just, very rich. And then I realized, well, I have to find a way to get these two together. So they have to have a common interest. So I picked the animal shelters. Nicole is very, she has fundraisers every year to raise money for animal shelters. Plus she volunteers and she does, cleans runs and feeds them. And Jody, she spends, she goes to the animal shelters before work or after work, and she's always going and helping out and cleaning runs and doing things. So that's basically how they meet, is that Jody ends up going to one of these fancy fundraisers that Nicole is having. So that's basically what I did, is just sort of a financial difference, big difference in the finances and who they know and what they do. Yep.
That's great. Well, I do have a couple questions prepared, but audience, if a question pops into your head during this panel, please drop it in the Q&A and hopefully we can get to it at the end here. But Carol, you led into one of my questions pretty nicely here. How has the trope of, I know, you ready? It's going to be for you. So how has the trope of opposites attract made it easier to discuss certain themes in sapphic literature, such as different socioeconomic backgrounds or cultural differences between characters?
So I'm sorry, what was the question for it?
So that's for you, Carol. How does the opposites attract trope help to depict the differences between characters, whether it be socioeconomic differences like you were talking about, or cultural differences?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think but the challenge would be to find common interests maybe for the characters, because each one would have different life experiences and different expectations, I guess, from life. So I think that that would be a challenge to try and get them to accept, I guess, the other one's, way of life and their ideas of how things should be.
Yeah, definitely. A lot to work through there, I'm sure. Renee, do you have anything to add to that?
I think it really has to do with circumstances around the characters. Like, what forces them into a proximity where, even though they have these opposite either ideas or views or characteristics, that they come together and there's something that is beyond both of their control, and how does that play into the overall theme of the opposite attracts kind of a situation. Because on the outside it looks like they would be like cats and dogs kind of in the same room, but yet, and even though there might be a lot of that back and forth kind of snarkiness between them, there's also this underlying current that neither of them can find a way to ignore. And I find that very interesting.
Definitely. What about you, Jackie? How does the opposites attract trope kind of bring out other issues within your book? I know we're on a big adventure here in Profiles.
I think one of the reasons that the opposites attract trope is kind of so appealing to a lot of people is typically opposites attract is often used as a mirror to hold up to the other characters too, to explore parts of themselves that maybe they ignore or have put behind them or reacted to because of situations that involve trauma or past mistakes or past regrets. So anytime you get someone who is kind of the polar opposite of you and reacts to things differently than you and behaves differently than you and thinks differently than you, it's can often be a beneficial and sometimes enduring mirror of your own issues or idiosyncrasies or things like that. So I think it's a fun thing to play with because we're all, kaleidoscopes of the people that we've met and experienced and everything. And I think that brings out a really insightful avenue to kind of voice that.
Yeah. So obviously it's a very widely used trope because of all those reasons you all have stated. And because it's so widely used, how do you keep it fresh? Is it setting or characters or other tropes? Jackie, you want to kick us off here?
Sure. For me, it's typically different backstories that have led them there. Like I said, I tend to gravitate towards opposite attract, and because I primarily write in this genre, they have a background from CIA or FBI or NSA or one of those areas. It's fun to plug in different instances that drew them to those kinds of fields, because it's not everyone that wants to work as a spy or an FBI agent or even a police officer. So all of them have kind of complicated stories that get them there, and some of them are heroic and stoic, and some of them are done out of desperation and kind of a sense of loss. So being able to cobble those different types of personality traits together and kind of throw them into the mix is it's fun. And when you are doing opposites attract, you can kind of decide, what would be if I was a person who liked order and structure and, I was always on time, what would be the most annoying thing for me to encounter in another person? And so the opposites kind of write themselves in that way. And in that, the same thing with the mirror, once you encounter someone like that, you kind of have to learn to let some of your own uptightness or fragility go in order to get along with them or exist with them. So it's fun to get to play with those areas.
Yeah, someone has to start to cave eventually, right? Carol, what about you? How do you keep the trope fresh?
Oh, that's a good question. This is really the first book I've written where I'm even considering that. And so I don't know, actually. I can't really keep it fresh. I guess
We're in progress.
perhaps because the characters are different and but they have an interest in each other, that they need to show that. I guess I'm saying, like, oh well, I wonder, oh gosh, Jody has this idea, oh God, Nicole, she's some rich bitch and she's, I don't want to get involved with her. And then Nicole might possibly looking at Jody and say, well, I don't know, we don't have anything in common, so getting over that and getting through that, showing that how they were going to overcome those issues, maybe would be, keep it fresh.
Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely the journey of overcoming those opposite opinions or backgrounds is always going to be unique for those unique characters, for sure. Renee, what about you? Is it setting? Is it characters? Is it other tropes? How are we keeping it fresh?
Well, for me, I try to keep every character that I write unique. And I'm not saying that every aspect of every character is going to be different always, but the combination of their own personality and style and likes and dislikes and what they're interested in and what they're passionate about, that has to be unique to each character, in my opinion. And because the combinations are endless, I mean, we're the writer, we can make them be anyone we want them to be. I think that keeps the stories fresh when opposites are thrown together, and how they work out those differences and those sticky points that sometimes just naturally disappear in other tropes or work themselves out. This one takes a little more work on the character's part. And because of that, I think that helps keep the story fresh. And then the settings. I try to put the characters in places that a reader can identify with, have some semblance of understanding. A pub, a bar, that's a common setting. And how many times have they seen that act out before them and wondered, who are these people and where do they come from and what's their background and why are they talking to each other when they're obviously strangers, and are they going to meet up again, or where are they going tonight? Those are all the questions that you want your readers to start thinking about, like right off the get-go. Like,
Definitely.
what is it about these two
I feel like
that I
definitely
can't
need
wait to find out?
I love it. Exactly. So we kind of touched on this, but what other tropes fit well with this opposites attract? I'm going to go to Jackie for this one because I love that they're like on that same team together. Let's talk about that some more.
Oh man, what other tropes fit well? Well, I think secrets and lies kind of go along with it. You're going to have, usually in opposites attract, there's going to be some type of event that takes place that's going to bring out those very intense qualities that are probably going to rub each other the wrong way. So that's either going to be an adventure story, or, even if it's a more traditional romance, they're going to probably go on a car trip or something together, or they're going to be thrown together in some type of wedding situation, or because if you're going to be writing opposites attract, they're going to have to be in situations that are going to highlight those differences, because that's going to ratchet up the intensity of it. So I gravitate towards the more we're searching for serial killers and or terrorists. That's more my thing, but that's not everyone's thing. So it's just you're almost always going to put them in situations that are going to bring out their best and worst qualities in each other, because that's usually when they fall in love.
Yeah, some forced proximity, some stress. Yeah, I love it. What about you, Carol? What tropes do you think fit well with this opposites attract?
Oh, boy, I don't even know if it's a trope really, but forcing them to be together, putting them in situations where they don't have a choice. They have to have to do it, even
Oh,
though
yeah,
they may
that's a
not.
trope for sure.
Maybe that, yeah.
Yeah, we had a panel earlier about forced proximity, and I was
Yeah.
feeling like it's like throwing them in a pressure cooker and making them, cook and get there, and definitely forced proximity. I'd agree with that for sure. Renee, what do you think?
Well, I think the workplace romance definitely
Oh yeah.
that works with that. It's like the forbidden relationship in a lot of situations, or it's a rivalry type situation that people are vying for the same position, a promotion in the works, or another one is the financial disparity. I mean, that to me is a big one, where opposites attract, where you have people who come from totally different worlds and backgrounds who stumble upon each other. And as much as they may have some type of disdain for the other's position, no matter what it is, there is something that neither one can deny. And is that a real life situation? I'm sure. So again, the more that I think that I put into my books that people can identify with, the stronger the characters come across as being these true opposites that against all odds make it work. And then the other one that I really like to use is small town, big city.
Oh yeah.
I think that, forcing one or the other into the other's location or lifestyle definitely stirs the pot of feelings of either I've never had this, I don't know what small town caring and concern for my neighbors is like. I come from a city of 1 million and no one gives a shit about me there, So
Right.
I think that that's something that can really work well with the opposite attracts.
Yeah, some fish out of water.
Yeah.
I want to touch back on something that Jackie was talking about, which is with opposites attract, is much like raising that mirror between characters and making them kind of see their differences or maybe their own faults. So when we're creating characters within this trope for our stories, how do you go about creating those opposite characters? Do you have one that's like totally in your head and then you mirror the second character after? Or is there a process you go through? Jackie, you want to kick us off here?
It's a little bit different every time. I don't have a standardized one. Sometimes when I start writing, I already have a character in mind and the rest kind of falls into place. Other times, I will look for real intentional opposites to kind of raise the intensity level. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear my kid crying. He's very loud. I have also I keep a birthday book next to my desk and I pick a zodiac sign that has recently pissed me off and I'll pull characteristics from them and then go to their polar opposite and pull them out of there, especially if, when I am writing books that have reoccurring characters in them, I really want to make sure that the new characters don't hold the same traits as the other ones. I mean, sure, there's going to be some repeats. I typically write heroes. So there's going to be some things in common with them, but you don't want to just be, copying and pasting and regurgitating the same situations and the same kind of intensity and blowups over and over again. So I pulled them from a little bit of everywhere. I've pulled them from people that have broken up with my best friend. There's all kinds of areas that I pull them from. But I think sometimes especially if you can relate them to real life scenarios and real instances that you've encountered people that you've really clashed with and kind of the way that made you feel, if you can incorporate that into your stories, that's really going to ring true to your readers and make it more believable. So I don't have a set process as much as what I'm writing on dictates kind of how I go about it.
I'm definitely stealing the birthday book method.
I got it sitting right here. It's great.
That's awesome.
4 Scorpios, I just.
I love that so much. I literally wrote it down. I'm stealing it. Carol, how about you? How do you go about crafting the characters so they're opposing kind of forces?
I have these wonderful forms that and my editor had sent me when I wrote my first book. And I do that for each character. And I fill it all in as sort of like, well, what she looks like. You start with all that and then get to a point where you find out how she might react to a situation. And I do that for both characters. And then I look at them and compare them and kind of tweak to see, well, what if she didn't want to do it this way, and this is going to be in conflict then because they're very different. And so that's sort of what I do. I spend a lot of time going through these and, looking at all the characters and trying to figure out exactly who they are before I start putting them into situations in the story.
Yeah, that's a good. I love a form, like kind of getting to know your characters, kind of that checklist for sure.
Mhm.
I feel that. Renee, how about you?
Well, I too use a detailed character worksheet when I first start writing, but I always have one character that I start with, and even 3/4 of the way through writing, you will see that one character has a massive ton of information, and the other one has much less, and so that usually tells me that it's this person's story, and then once I have the basis for that person, then I kind of organically say, all right, what would be like the weirdest kind of attraction or the most offbeat kind of attraction that could happen, or what kind of a situation would another person be in to like catch that person's attention? um just a kind of an off the wall kind of thing is like if people are walking down the street and the one person slips and falls and they're caught by this other individual, and the other individual happens to be, let's say, a street person, and the person who falls is the rich corporate person, and now that's a a financial disparity kind of thing, but that kind of happened organically because I knew the person who slipped on the ice. I wrote their character out, and the person who kind of called to me was the person who would be opposite of that, and that's just one example of how I build my characters. And I learn a lot more about that secondary character through writing so heavily about my first character, because they help develop the second character. They help that person grow and see things differently. So that's one of the ways that I do it, but I always start with one character that I know very, very well.
And what POV are you writing in when you're doing this?
Desires Unleashed is two separate first-person POVs.
Oh,
Each chapter is the other person's story, so to speak. And that was fun for me. That was a departure from my normal third person past tense point of view, and I enjoyed it. It was hard work though. Writing in first person makes you look at things a whole different way than writing in third, but I liked it. I enjoyed it, and I'll probably do it again, but I think it plays into the erotic romance a lot better than it does in a contemporary romance or perhaps another genre.
yeah, I feel like that opposing first person point of view would definitely help to build the tension in a opposites attract type of romance for sure.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite way to write opposites attract? People can be opposites in a multitude of ways. They can have opposite goals, opposite personalities, opposites wants and needs, or cultural backgrounds. So when you're writing opposites attract, what is kind of your go-to opposing force? Carol?
Well, like I said, I think this was really the first one I wrote like that, and I chose the financial disparity. But I think it might be interesting to maybe do a cultural one. I don't know exactly how that would work, but maybe I don't know, an immigrant from another country maybe came and she's living here and she's learning about the country, and then have one that was born here and she's knows everything about the country here, and try and get them together and to mesh maybe might be interesting.
Definitely. That would be a great one for sure. Jackie, what about you?
I've wrote them from a lot of different angles. I think my favorite to write though is a really differing family history. I think the way you were brought up and your interactions and your relationships with your family impact so much of how you behave and who you are, and even down to the choices you make in a career field and how you're going to handle stressful situations. And I think that has a significant impact on how you look at the world and the goals you even set. So I typically, I find myself, now that you asked that question, I'm thinking about it, I guess that's what I normally do. One comes typically from a really stable, loving home, where the other one comes from kind of more of a rough upbringing with a lot more socioeconomic obstacles, or, parental obstacles, sibling obstacles than the other one does. And it definitely, it can also add to shades of jealousy and the whole, well, how could you possibly understand where I'm coming from because you've never experienced anything like this? So I didn't realize that I did that. And
That makes so much sense though. Like I literally asked, is it opposite goals, personalities, wants and needs? And I think we could argue that all of that stems from how you grow up, and if you feel secure or insecure, or all of
thanks
those.
for trying to make me feel better. Yeah.
I liked it. Renee, how are we feeling about it?
I think that I tend to focus on, and I don't like the word faults, so character faults, I don't like that, but character wounds. Like, every character I write probably has a deep-seated wound that makes them feel either unworthy, unequal, undesirable, unwanted, broken. There's a ton of different ways to look at that. And to have that person come into your life who suddenly shines a bright light and say, that's not true, that's not who you are, that's just a circumstance that you grew through and survived. And I guess that's how I look at developing my characters, is that they can't be perfect, because no one is. And I don't know if a writer wants to read about two perfect characters on a page. What would be the tension? What would be the driving force to bring them even closer? So I tend to write characters that have a character flaw, a deficiency, or a wound that has been basically hidden from most people, and that this other person sees, discovers, and helps them overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us make it out without a little bit of scarring or bruises here and there for sure. So that makes sense to me. Renee, we'll stick with you. So we have these opposite personalities or upbringings or whatever we have to kind of surmount to build this romance. So what brings the characters together if they are so opposing in whatever way?
I think attraction is innate. I think that the the people that notice others, that's an innate sense of knowing that there is something about that person that is attractive or is compelling or is endearing or inspiring. So I think that to me is what draws them together, whether they, again, like I said, are fighting like cats and dogs in a cage, and they end up going apart and licking their wounds, they find a way to get back together or constantly think about that person, even if they aren't together. And sooner or later, someone seeks the other out.
Right.
And I think that's kind of a, I don't want to say a fun, because that kind of sounds sadistic, but it is. It's kind of like, it keeps me turning a page in a book when, it's just like, I know that this is going to happen this way, but how does it happen?
Right.
It's the how that I think that we control the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think I put a lot of stock into just like chemistry. Like there's something about it's real, if you're drawn to another person, you might not know why, but like that means something. That means a lot. So that
Of all the people whose paths we cross, why that person?
Exactly. Yes.
What made us do a second take?
Exactly.
Or a third or a fourth or a fifth?
Yeah, it'll always be that invisible little rope tugging you back to that person, no matter your differences, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Carol, what about you? In this is your first, attempt at opposites
Mhm.
attract, but what have you found that, really brings those characters together?
I think is probably maybe, I guess I could say curiosity, maybe by one character for the other, like, oh my gosh, who is that? And I've never met anyone that's, I've never met this rich woman, or I've never met this, and maybe just an interest in finding out who they are, just probably because they're attractive, but also because they're just different, and they have a completely different lifestyle than the other one does. Maybe.
Yeah, definitely curiosity, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Curiosity drives us into all sorts of fun little
Oh, yeah.
situations.
Good and bad, yes.
Good and bad, for sure. But we never stop, right?
Yep, no, that's life.
That's
Keeps
life.
it interesting, right?
All right, Jackie D, I'm sure there is a lot that are pushing your characters together here. Tell us about it.
Well, I think that the difference is it's the like promise of being a better person, right? Like the differences in other people force us to grow. It's like rubbing up against a rough edge, and that's what makes you sharper. It's what makes you more empathetic. It's what makes you see more in the world. So when you encounter someone that has the polar opposite attributes as you, not only is it a mirror, but it's going to force you to grow. And typically in growth, we become better. So what you often see with opposites attract is they end up helping the other become the best version of themselves. And I think one of the reasons it's such an enduring trope is because I think everyone loves that idea, right? Like, because even if it ended in heartache, they're probably still going to have made you a better person in some way, because you'll never view the world the same after them. So all of that adds to the promise and the hope that is so intrinsic in romance novels. And I think that's why the people are always pulling for the opposites attract thing, because you want them to be like, oh, if you could just see it from her point of view for 5 minutes. It's that old saying, like, if you could just see you how I see you, you would feel very differently about yourself. And I think that's all part of the web of opposites attract. It's that hope.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And so once the characters, surmount this mountain, they fall in love, they're together. You're saying it makes them stronger together. but how does their opposites, personalities, how after they get together, is it still an issue in that kind of third act?
Always.
Always. Mayhem.
I've been with my wife for 9 years and she still drives me absolutely crazy. I mean, like, it's always an issue.
Yeah, I think we all know the answer to that.
But it doesn't mean that you don't love them dearly, right?
Exactly.
And it's also that willingness to kind of, especially if you're writing a really, type A personality character and you see them kind of loosen up, because typically they're going to encounter someone that is just, yeah, let's go take a weekend trip, let's go do whatever. It's nice to see those kind of barriers break down, or those chains that have been kept around them for so long kind of start to disintegrate in front of your eyes. So that's always going to be an issue. People are who they are, and even if you nudge them in certain directions, they're not going to fundamentally change. But I think that's part of the excitement too, right? You fell in love with them because they're going to push you out of your comfort zone. They're going to force you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. And so I think, but it's your characters, they learn to love that about each other. And that's one of the things that keeps them together, I think. So I don't think there's ever a point where you're like, well, I'm sure everything will be peachy and roses and they'll never have another argument, because that's not how they got together either. And they'd probably both be bored with that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what is your favorite opposites attract couple you've written and why? Carol, we'll start with you because this seems to be the first one in the one. So tell us a little bit about the couple.
Well, like I said, Nicole is, she's a wealthy woman. She comes from a wealthy family, but she's very down to earth and she's very accepting, I guess I'll say, of people and other people like Jody that she meets. And she doesn't look down on others that don't have, money, and that she doesn't hold herself above everybody else. And so it was because of that, because I knew that about the character anyway when I wrote it, it was easier for me to bring love to her, to bring someone into her life that maybe wasn't on her financial, in the same scale, but it didn't matter to her. She was looking at the other person as who she was and where she, didn't care about her finances or anything else. So I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Of course. Yeah, sounds great. Renee, favorite opposites attract couple you've written?
Actually, it has to be the couple from Bonded Love. That was a manuscript that I wrote long before I ever thought I would be an author. And I fell in love with those characters. The one character is Blaze, who wants to pass her legacy of being a master carpenter on to her children, and like her father and her grandfather did. And she is looking for a partner that wants the same things. And along comes Trinity, who is career minded, and she doesn't care about setting up a long-term relationship. She doesn't have time or energy for anything but wanting to advance her career, and she's all about the casual sex. But no matter what gets in the way of them, wanting their own things, they don't have a choice really except to explore what's between them. Even in the hardest of times, it is always there. It's always that kernel that makes them question their motivation for why am I resisting as much as why am I pursuing?
Yeah, I love that.
Mhm.
Okay, Jackie, who's your favorite?
I think my favorite was the main couple from the After Dark series, Brooke and Tyler, and it's probably because I spent the most time with them. 3 books with them, and then they've made appearances in other ones. Is a long time to hang out with those two. But I think my favorite thing about them was it was really intentional that I wrote them fiercely independent on their own, and almost so much so that it really only made sense that they could end up together. And it was important to me that both of them let the other always be themselves, no matter what, even when they didn't agree with the decisions that they made. So I think that one of the things that makes them special is their independence from each other, and then their absolute, almost primal need to be together, which makes for some really interesting situations and dialogue and pushing each other, and again, holding up that mirror to each other, because they have such security and faith in their relationship, but aren't going to budge on who they are. And so they've always been my favorite. And I think that's probably why I keep going back to them and bringing them into other books, is because I like writing them so much.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it sounds hot. All right, so I don't see any questions in the Q&A here. So I want to know what we can look forward to from y'all. What are we working on, Jackie?
I'm working on a time jumping book right now, another Save the World book. And I've been working on it though for 2 years. So it's it's taken some time, because it's going to 2 different time periods. It takes a tremendous amount of research, and you want to get it right, and it is being written in the first person. I'm writing it with someone else, so but it's also probably been my favorite thing to work on. So we didn't give ourselves a time limit. We didn't put it under contract yet, because we just wanted to get everything perfect before we move forward with it. So
that's awesome. Well, we're definitely looking forward to that for sure. Carol, what are we working on?
Well, I was inspired by the Hurricane Ian when it came through and wiped out Florida. So I'm working on, it's titled Evacuation to Love, and it is about a woman who moves to Florida, and just before this big hurricane, get 4 hurricane is coming through, and she has a friend, she befriends someone down there, and she has a daughter who lives in South Carolina. So she evacuates then from Florida to South Carolina while this, hurricane is going through Florida. And that's where the love interest is. So that's where she's going to meet someone, the love of her life there. So
I love the title too. Awesome. Sounds great. Renee, what can we look forward to from you?
I am going to be doing edits soon on a novella. There's a triple novella called Decadence, and that I wrote that with Ronica Black and Piper Jordan, and we had fun. We have the same setting. It's set in Las Vegas, and it is a night of decadence. And each of us has a story that wraps around the same setting and theme and some of the same characters. But our stories themselves are our own. And that was fun. That was a fun write. I'm not quite sure when that releases. I think it's in August of this year. And then I have a couple of proposals in the works. So we'll see.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, y'all, for being on this panel with me. And thank you to all the viewers. We have another fun-filled day tomorrow, so please be sure to tune in for awesome readings, panels, Q&As, and don't forget we're having an awesome sale on the Bold Strokes Books website right now, so check it out. Thank you all again, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you all the viewers.